Listen, I'd like to introduce our speakers to you. Many of you know the first couple because it's Pastor Joe, our lead pastor here, and his wife, Karen. Karen is actually a professional clinical counselor. They have three grown children, 4 grandchildren, and they've been married for 37 years, which is wonderful. And then we have a special guest here, and it's really a treat because it's Joe's brother, Brian. So Pastor Brian Coffey and his wife, Lorene. Brian is the pastor of leadership and development at Chapel Street Church in Geneva, Illinois. And then Lorene is actually the director of the women's ministry at the same church. Brian was the lead pastor there for 22 years before he kind of stepped into a different role just recently. But they have 3 grown kids, and they've been married for 32. You have 4? All right. Joe said 3. He doesn't even know you. All right. They have 4 kids, and they're all grown, and they have been married for 32 years. So, hey, since both of you couples were married in the 80s, I just wanted to mention that is the best decade for love songs ever. All right? So go ahead and give a round of applause to Joe and Coffey and Brian Lorene. Thanks.
Well, thanks for coming. I always think one about the wedding photo there. We had somebody come over to our house one time, and they saw that, and they were just visiting Karen, and they were afraid to ask about it because they thought it might be her first husband. What? Anyway. We're glad you're here, glad that my brother Brian and his wife Lorene are here. And what Todd said is right. They've been married 32 years, have 4 boys, Jordan, Jesse, Micah, and Canaan. And this is what we want to do tonight. We're calling this Is Us, kind of after the TV show, because it's really popular. But also, we thought it'd be good if we could just kind of have some real talk about marriage in general, and about our marriages in particular, in hopes that it would help all of us. So we wanted to set it up like a living room, so it'd be less scripted and more kind of natural. And so it'd be like we have just invited 800 of our closest friends over for just a time. So what we're going to do is we're going to since both couples, have gone through all the stages of marriage and are now into the empty nest stage, we thought it might be good to spend the first part of our evening kind of looking back on the different stages and kind of asking each other if you could go back and do it over, or if you could, what's something you learned during the newlywed stage that was good to learn, or that you wish you'd told yourself, whatever, then tell it now. And so if you're married for 1 year, or you're in the crazy children stage, or if you're in the teenager to adult stage with your children, or if you're in the empty nest stage, hopefully some of this will apply to you. And then we're going to give you kind of a theory about marriage, and then a language kind of to talk about it with each other. All right? Sound okay? Okay. First question for Brian and Lorene. When was the last time you guys had sex? Okay, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. I just thought that was good.
Is that in hours or days?
Yeah. Brian asked me to ask that. I don't know why. Is that now? No, I'm stopping. I'm stopping. Lorene, that was her greatest fear, that this was going to happen. All right. Sorry. We're back. See, if you're at our house, this is the way it would go, so I just want you to know. Okay, first year of marriage. You guys had kind of a different first year. Tell everybody about that, and then kind of what you learned, what you needed to learn, all that.
All right, well, first of all, let me say thank you to Joe and Karen for inviting us to share this evening with you. You may not know, but a year and a half ago, they came up to our church, and we did a similar event, and they were terrific. And some of our people still talk about the M&Ms we're going to hear about tonight. Second of all, I want to tell your church that I've watched sort of from a distance for 20, 25 years as Hudson and CCC grew and developed, and as Joe grew and developed. And I've watched how you've cared for and supported him and his family and my parents, and I want to thank you for that. And just tell you, you are a terrific church, an amazing church. And from my point of view, you also have a pretty terrific pastor, so congratulations on all that. But we're glad to be here. Joe's right. We had kind of an unconventional first year. A month after we were married, we moved to South America and lived in Bolivia for 6 months. And then when we came back, we lived with my parents for 6 months. So that's not exactly the way you draw up your first year of marriage. We went to Bolivia actually with Joe and Karen on a mission experience there. They had Jeremy and Rachel at that time, who are both here tonight. And their experience down there was more stressful than ours because they had young children, different culture, different language, very stressful. We had no money. But for us, looking back from our perspective now, it was really one of the better times of our marriage. Very foundational. Even though it sounded crazy to do, those 6 months in Bolivia were great for us because we shared an adventure. We were together almost all the time. We went through everything together. The pace of life was never that slow again until now, 32 years later. And we look at it now as a great gift to us because of the foundations we were able to build during those 6 months in a completely different place because we shared the same world even though it was a different world.
Mm-hmm. Well, the other piece that was foundational for us was a shift in my emotional relationship with my twin sister. I grew up on the mission field. My sister and I were sent away to boarding school, and we just developed a really, really close relationship. And so when I met Brian, of course, my twin sister was still involved in my life. We were very close, but it was really important for me to make that emotional shift. And so I wanted to be one big happy family, and in his wisdom, he knew that wasn't, we needed some separation there. But so Bolivia, those 6 months were really great to set that foundation, and my emotional shift from her to him was really critical during that time.
Okay. And what about our first year?
So our first year wasn't quite as positive as theirs was. We were...
Didn't see that one coming.
Let me explain.
Okay.
Yeah, so we were married in college, and I was 20, and he was 21, and that was great, but I think my immaturity, I was naive in what marriage was and what it was going to be, and my sentence for the first year of our marriage was, conflict does not equal divorce. And what I mean by that is whenever there was any kind of conflict between us, automatically I thought, it's not supposed to be this way. He was supposed to fill all my needs. I was supposed to be happy and not sad anymore. I was supposed to be have a friend and not lonely. And then all of a sudden, I was feeling like
it ended up being me. So.
I was feeling like there was conflict,
Right.
and I wasn't sure how to handle it.
We talked some about this as a couple. Every couple needs to figure out how to handle conflict. And the way their issue with conflict that they had to walk through was different than ours. Karen had a good reason to think that, partly because of the way I handled conflict when we first got married. I'm fairly aggressive, and I think very quickly. And so I approached any kind of conflict with the framework that the goal of any conflict is to win. It's like a competition. So when we would start to get into an argument, I would kind of come alive at that time. So I'd be going, okay, go ahead. And I would be like anxious for her to say whatever she was going to say because I was like a chess player that was playing speed chess. I'd be going, I know what I'm going to say. Go, 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 go. And then I would hit. So our conflicts were not they were not to try to resolve something. In my mind, a conflict was for me to win, and then I would move on to the next thing. So it took a long time. Well, we'll talk about it in a minute, but probably 5 years for me to figure out exactly how to process conflict in a much healthier way. Now, you guys had kind of the opposite issue.
Yeah, we did. We came back from, after that first year, we came back from Bolivia, lived with my parents for 6 months, found a job up at what was then First Baptist Church of Geneva as youth pastor, and she got a job at Wheaton College processing undergrad admissions applications, right? So, and we waited 5 years. We decided to wait to have children. So even though I was 28 when we got married, I know I look like I'm younger than him, but I'm actually older than him. But we waited 5 years, but we needed that 5 years. It turned out to be a really good decision to wait because we had to learn how to do conflict. One of the things I would tell my younger self, if I could, would be do conflict better. Don't be afraid of it. Because I was sort of the opposite of Joe. I avoid conflict almost at all costs. And Lorene is a little bit of an avoider too, so, which is kind of good in a way. We have very few conflicts because we avoid them all. But you can't avoid them all. And eventually when they would happen, they would be shockingly strong and serious and sort of fierce. It was like, where did that come from? And so we had to learn a way to have conflict. For example, one of our early conflicts just had to do with weekends. Remember I said I took a job as a youth pastor, and I'm a borderline introvert, naturally. So I had a job all week long where I'm around people. I was a pastor, so I'm around people. Lorene took a job, and she's an extrovert, so she took a job working in front of a computer with paper all week. So on Friday, after work, we'd hit a weekend, and what did she want to do? Go out with a bunch of people. Go bowling, go this, go that, go the other. What did I want to do? I just wanted to stay home with her. That's all I wanted to do. And so we would get into conflicts over how to spend a weekend. She'd plan something, I'd go, and I'd be just like a wet blanket. I didn't want to be there. I was unhappy. I was mad at her, and she didn't know it was wrong. And I wouldn't tell her. I just was upset. Or we stayed home, and I was happy, but she was unhappy because she wanted to go do things. And it took two people with graduate degrees in psychology 2 years to figure out that we could just say, as long as I knew for sure she'd give me one night at home on a weekend, I was fine going out and doing other things. It took 2 years to figure that out. We had this silent war for almost 2 years. But we needed the 5 years to figure out even how to begin to do conflict. And our problem was because we didn't have it. We avoided it.
Mm-hmm. Well, the other thing, I think, we look back and have taken some time to talk about what would we do differently during those early years. And one of the other things we talked about was just, I think I would tell myself to be more honest about communication. I think Todd referred to it early when we were together, but just I had the expectation that he could read my mind and that he would know what I was thinking. And I know part of that came from my upbringing. Again, having a twin sister, we could know each other's thoughts almost from across the room. And so it was really this unfair expectation that I put on him that he would know what I was thinking, he would know what I wanted, he would know how to respond. And it played itself out in a scenario that happened often early in our marriage. And we referred to that as the kitchen bedroom story. And the way it played out was we'd have dinner, we would put our things on the counter, we would go spend some time in the living room watching TV, whatever. Well, after a while, he's about ready to go to bed. I, on the other hand, am thinking about the dishes in the kitchen haven't been done yet. So I go back to the kitchen, and he's in the bedroom.
Red silk boxers.
And he's...
The telltale sign.
He's fuming in there. I'm fuming in the kitchen, getting all the things cleaned up, thinking, why isn't he here with me? When he should know that that's what I would want him to do. And having to wrestle through that, and again, looking now, it looks more clear than it was, of course, at the time, but having to take time to communicate and to say, this is why it's important to me. My grandmother cleaned the kitchen before she went to bed, and my mother did that, and it's a fresh start to the day the next day, and it means being a good wife. And to him, to be able to say, intimacy is how I feel loved, and it's something that's important to me as a man and shows me respect. But again, the communication, we just took a long time.
You got to picture the scene there. You really have to picture it, though, because it sounds funny now, and it kind of is, but it wasn't then. Because, that's kind of why I got married, and so I go in, so I go into the bedroom, and I'm, getting everything ready, just the lighting, and get the red silk boxers, and she's banging around pots and pans in the kitchen like there's no tomorrow. I'm like, what the heck? She cares more about the kitchen than she does me, and then when she finally come in, I'd be mad, right? I'm already mad, she's already mad, And so, but we don't say it because we're both avoiders. So we lay down in bed, and there's like, you know, the wall that is being built down in, we had a wall that was made out of ice and barbed wire, invisible. And sometimes it was so frustrating, I'd get up and just walk because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to say it. I didn't know how to talk about it. But that went on that was a couple of years too. So 2 years to figure out weekends and 2 years to figure out bedroom, kitchen. That's why we needed the 5 years.
Now I'm
It's
not
also why we
saying,
didn't have kids for 5 years too. But
I'm not, no. I'm not saying that Brian was fixated on that, but when Todd said condiments, he said Trojan right away. So I don't know. I'm just saying. But see, now if you were in our living room, we would say stuff like that. Just I know this is the church. All right. So you guys did finally figure it out because then you hit the kid stage. We were already in it because we had our firstborn within 2.5 years, right? So when you guys started popping them out, you did it like 4 boys in 7 years. Right? So you entered into what I call the kind of the crazy years of being dominated by children. So
we did.
Let's talk about that.
We had 4 boys in 7 years. And so very quickly, our lives became dominated by our children's activities, church, music, school, and sports. Lots of sports. Our boys enjoyed sports. I enjoyed sports. And within a few years, and this will sound a little bit crazy, but within a few years, we would have, for example, multiple years where we had 250 baseball games just in the summer between all 4 boys. See, audiences always do that. And then in a year, we'd have over 350 sporting events in a year. And so Lorene likes to look back at that and say our lives were really more like air traffic control than marriage. And it was fun, lots of stuff to do, but that's not the best way, to do marriage. We did do a couple of good, looking back, what we would tell ourselves is we did a couple of good things, made a couple of good decisions during the crazy years. One was we decided we would not stop being a couple, which meant we weren't afraid to get sitters, we weren't afraid to have date nights. Looking back, we would do that more. We weren't afraid to go away for a night into Chicago and get a sitter for all night long, but we would do that more if we could tell ourselves. We basically survived those years by being a little bit lucky because both of us are relatively low maintenance people, high levels of trust, and so we were at risk for drifting completely apart during that time by focusing on our kids. We didn't, because we were lucky by our DNA just worked that way. We should have done a lot more connecting. So I don't know if you can talk about that a little bit.
Well, yeah, I think some of the issues during that time for us in that stage of life had to do, again, with some communication. And I was in the world of raising these boys, and I was at home, and he was in his work world, and just living in those 2 different worlds, trying to figure out how to communicate when we came together. And so he would come in the door, and I would want to talk. I would want to find out about his day, and he would typically just say, fine. And when he really grew in his communication, it was pretty good. And
just double the words, it's twice as many words.
And when he would then come in and ask me the same thing, I would go through the whole day. I would tell him everything. I had all my words to use up still. But then there were days where it was not a pretty list that I was giving him. And I would say, the boys have been out of control. I'd burn dinner and I have a headache. And he would say, what's the big deal? Take Tylenol, put the boys in timeout, and we'll order out pizza.
Done, fixed, right? I can fix that stuff, and I do this. This is what I do.
And I felt just that those emotions were minimized. I didn't want him to fix it. I just wanted him to understand it. And I think we went through the process having to communicate to understand finally that it was okay for him to say, do you want me to fix this, or do you want me to just listen? And oftentimes it was, just need to listen. So those were issues during those years.
Okay, how about us?
So we had children quicker, and again, we were still pretty young, so we were kind of fumbling around in terms of what our roles were. And I think I come from a pretty traditional family, and again, as you know, as I already shared, conflict was hard. So it was also hard for me to ask for help from Joe. He was working, I was the homemaker, I'll take care of the kids in the home, you just come home and relax. And consequently, that made me feel a little bit unsupported, and that made him feel disconnected with me and the kids because we had our thing going and we had it all figured out. And so that was something, I guess if I could go back and tell my, that self of the year, probably 1 through 5, I would be more articulate on ways that you could help me, and then wait for you to say, hey, how about if I help you with...
Yeah, that's what I would have done. I mean, if I had to go back and tell myself something, I would have said, go and always be asking, how can I engage? What do I do? Because if I didn't know what to do, there was a lot going on, and it seemed like you were doing a terrific job.
Thank you.
But one time, now later, a little bit later on, I remember one time she said to me, this is when we were getting better at communicating, she said, you don't really know what I do. And I went, what? And she said, you don't know what I do. And I said, well, and I realized I had no idea what she did with her day. And so I said, you're right. So I took her to Starbucks, and I got a yellow pad because I always do stuff on yellow pads. And I said, tell me what you do on Monday. And I wanted to know, I said, I want to know everything. I want to know Tuesday, I want to know Wednesday. That was one of the best things that I ever did, just because I started to realize, because even while I was writing it down, I was going, seriously, wow. What about Tuesday? And then I started feeling like I'm not doing anything, so that really helped us during that time. All right, so next stage is teenagers to adults. Now, it's interesting, even when we were talking about this among ourselves, it's interesting to start focusing on parenting and not on our marriage, even when we talked through it. So when we talk about teenagers to adults, what was the best thing? Oh, I'm sorry, one more thing. One of the best things we did early on from the first year was that we would always have one meal, just the two of us, every week. Now, when we first got married, we were so poor that it had to be breakfast because that was the cheapest meal to have out. And we had a missionary friend that came over and she did her laundry because she was poor. Find somebody who's poorer than you are. She would come over and use our washer and dryer because we did have a washer and dryer. And she would watch the kids, and we went out to breakfast. And so we did that every week, once a week, and we have always had one meal a week, just the two of us, and that really helped us during the crazy time. So I would always recommend that. All right, so the teenagers to adults.
Yeah, like Joe said, he brought this up, and we kind of looked at each other like, well, now we're talking about parenting. Because the truth is, looking back at that period of our lives, our marriage was almost completely overwhelmed by parenting. That was the content of our marriage, was parenting and our kids, which is not bad, but it's not the greatest way to do marriage, and we were lucky to survive that without a huge rifts happening between the two of us. And I would encourage anybody going through the crazy years, build in times like breakfast, build in times like at Starbucks, build in dinner time, build in times when you stay connected, because before you know it, you're pretty far apart. But for us, as the boys got to be teenagers, we did a couple things looking back that we would tell ourselves to do again. And one of the main things is we parented together. We would always talk together before we dealt with this issue or that son or with whatever they were dealing with. So we were on the same page about that. And that became, if our marriage was going to be overwhelmed by parenting, at least we parented together. And we did a couple things, like we fought like crazy to make sure we had dinner times together as a family. And we made sure we prayed before the boys went to school. They stopped at the door, we prayed at night. We did things as routinely as we could. We built routines into their lives, into our lives. So even when we were sort of ignoring our marriage, we were doing that together, and that helped us.
Yeah, and one thing with having kids that just hit me so profoundly was the difference between Joe and I. And as we've shared already, you could see there were some obvious differences. But with parenting, here now you come with your history of your family of origin into a home where you expect that your way was right. And his way is different, and it didn't make sense. And so as a couple, that's, I think, one of the big challenges is to figure out how to parent the way you are as your family is wired. And one way to think about that would be to talk about, okay, what are our goals as a family? What do we want to look like? What do we want our children to behave like? What do we want them to value? What are your family values? What are your goals? And then form your own family discipline, traditions. It's going to look a little different than the way you were raised, but it's going to be you.
And one of the best things that Karen did as we headed into teens, taking our teenagers to adults, was Karen is really, really wired to be a mom. She is a wonderful mother.
I love being a mom.
She does. And but she saw kind of that end coming, the end of that chapter. And so she decided, you know what, I need to have something waiting for me. I can't get my identity from my children. And so she went back to school, and that's when she got her degree, her master's degree in counseling, and so that she had something to go to. That was so smart, because we have seen it's really hard if somebody who's wired like Karen and their kids grow up. If you don't have another identity, if you don't have something else that you can do, that you can start to feel like, oh, this is me, then you will continue to parent. And if it's not your children, you'll parent your grandchildren, and that will become that person that's always going there. And for us, that was a really important thing, and I was really proud of her for seeing that, and then for going back to school and preparing for that.
Yeah, and husbands, he was so patient in encouraging me with that. There were many nights I had night classes, and he had to either figure out dinner or go somewhere with dinner. He always encouraged me. Every semester I would say, I can't do this, it's too hard. And he would say, you can do it, you've done it already. And I'm not saying y'all need to go out and get your master's degree, but I'm saying find something that you love, whether it's Bible study, whether it's mentoring, whether it's small groups. So many ministries in the area want people to hold babies, to talk to teens. Find something outside of your home that gives you joy, that you could feel God's pleasure in, and go for it. And it's going to be inconvenient, but it's going to pay off in the long run, because God has gifted you for some things too. And mothering is the best job in the world, but it doesn't last forever.
Okay. Last thing, empty nest. A couple minutes.
Yeah, we are mostly empty nest. We have a 27-year-old, 25-year-old, the 22-year-old and 20-year-old are in college right now, so they're out. But the 25-year-old is back living with us, working in the area, so he's kind of around, but not really. But we're just now entering that phase, and we're actually kind of relearning how to be a couple without the domination of kids running our lives, and it's a little weird. It's good. We can be spontaneous. We can do a trip now and then, and we have to remind ourselves that we can actually do that. Want to go on a bike ride? Well, yeah, we got no games to go to today. Let's go on a bike ride. And so, starting to reconnect is fun, and it's different for us, and it's kind of a new. We feel a new phase opening up to us, but we're just getting used to it.
Yeah, I would add that along with that, it is an exciting adventure, and as much as I too just loved being a mom, and our roles we'll always be moms. It'll just change the responsibilities of that. So we ventured into this stage with that sense of loss of having the boys at home and their activities, but adventure too. And I feel like we're just kind of on the brink of that adventure, and it's been fun. And it's been fun to feel like we're going back to our early days. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the last component I just want to mention is to foster really good, healthy friendships. I can remember back when we first had the kids, those are some of my closest friends to date. And then as you mature and your kids grow up, you have that strong bond with people. And now as empty nesters, it's fun just to play with those friends that you've had and know who you are and the journeys that you've been on. And honestly, Brian and Lorene have been such great friends of ours and always faithful and there, and we've had so many opportunities to share life together. And what a gift that is to foster family relationships. So when you come to those challenges, which we will and we have each other. And so I want to encourage you with that too.
And I love the empty nest, partly because when we got married, I actually remember waking up on our honeymoon, and I made fun of Brian, but I got married for the same reason. But I remember, I had this, before we got married, I had this, I got to get married, we got to get married, we got to get married, and there was an urgency. And then on the honeymoon, then with the whole sex and all that, the urgency left. And I remember Karen being asleep next to me, and I was looking at her, and I remember thinking, I'm really glad we're friends. I'm really glad I like her a lot, right? Because all that feeling, all that, if I don't get married, I'm going to pop, that kind of thing. A lot of that was sexual stuff. And then I was thinking, I married a really good friend, and then now as an empty nester, I get to spend an awful lot of time with this, my best friend, who I've now had for 37 years. So for me, it's a great, great time. All right, so that's it. That's the part. All right, now, we give you the theory and then the language, because the language is helpful just to talk. I'll explain that in a minute. Years and years ago, maybe 25 years ago, I went to a seminar by Larry Crabb, who's a psychologist. And I remember him saying that there were two emotional needs. Every human being has two emotional needs. The need to feel loved and the need to feel important, to feel significant. And that stuck with me. And he even had, the research about it. And there was research done with orphans in Romania that weren't being touched. And if a human being does not feel love, does not have that emotional need met, a human being as a baby will actually die. So you are desperate inside for those two things, those two emotional needs. And most of you know, if you've come here, I love analogies. I have to think in analogy. I have to see things. I like props. So I came up with this idea of M&Ms. If every time you needed to feel loved, instead of needing a hug or somebody to tell you that you love them, you needed a red M&M. And if you eat a red M&M, you feel loved. And every time you needed to feel important or significant, instead of getting a raise or an attaboy or some compliment, you just needed to eat a green M&M. Then red and green M&Ms would be the most important commodities in the world. You'd wake up in the morning and you would look over and find a couple red M&Ms, pop them in your mouth, a couple green M&Ms, have a cup of coffee. You would feel good until noon. And then at noon, if you started to feel down, somebody said something bad, you just find in your pocket some red M&Ms, some green M&Ms, eat those, you're good, right? You get mugged for red and green M&Ms. Wars would be fought over red and green M&Ms. You got that? All right, so you don't have to be married for very long before you realize there's a difference between men and women. We're wired differently in a lot of different ways, but one of the ways is this way. Human beings need both those needs met. But if the average woman had to choose between feeling really loved or really important, the average woman would choose what? To be loved. She would choose red ones. If the average man had to choose between feeling really loved or really successful, what would the average man choose? The average man would choose to be important, to be significant, to feel successful. Those are green ones. So what I got in my mind was this idea that everybody is working like that Karen works on runs on red M&Ms, I run on green M&Ms, and somehow we have to figure that out. All right, so I'm going to show you now a clip from the show Modern Family. And I want you now, with that theory in mind, I want you to see kind of what's happening between Claire and Phil on this particular episode and how the M&Ms are coming into play. So go ahead and run the clip.
What you reading there, a book?
Yeah, I've been meaning to get to it for a while.
Oh, it's got a map at the beginning. I like it when books do that.
Mm-hmm. Did you have an open house this morning?
I rescheduled. Thought you might like some company. Well, the first day of school can be tough for stay-at-home moms. Now, you have to understand, the kids are gone, the nest is empty, they are rudderless. And a lot of guys wouldn't even notice, but I'm not a lot of guys. I listen with my mind, and if you pay attention, women will tell you what they want by telling you the opposite of what they want. Like the other day, Claire was like, you have to move your car. There's no space in the garage for both of our cars. And what she's really saying is that, you know, I should probably get a sports car.
I was sort of looking forward to a quiet day. I thought I'd just read, maybe go for a run later. Well, that's it.
Great. We'll run together.
You don't have to do that.
I know. Listening.
The thing is, I like to run alone, and I run kind of fast,
So,
so I'm not sure you're going to be able to keep up with me.
you're kidding, right?
No,
You really think I can't keep up with you?
I'm not sure you can keep up with this conversation.
I think you're forgetting that I power walk every morning and that I wear my special shoes with the big soles, which were designed by a doctor.
Yes, I know. But I run every day.
You really think you can run as fast as me?
No, Phil, I think I can run much, much faster than you.
Boom. Just like that, the whole day changed. It was game on. She knew it, I knew it, we both knew it.
I just want to read.
Okay, now it's all set up. This is the way marriages work. Like it's set up. Phil has no idea, but he's got a bunch of green M&Ms that are about to be taken if he loses this race. Now, I really like this episode because of the way Claire sees it. And so watch how this story ends.
I always take the stairs 2 at a time. I don't even think about it anymore. The regular way would seem weird.
Phil, let it go. I'm faster than you.
If only there was some way we could settle this once and for all, but how? Huh.
You seriously want to race me? I ran a half marathon last year.
Well, I'm half scared.
Okay, we do need to do this. I'll go change.
Not now. I got a conference call. But how about after that?
Great, this afternoon.
Sweet. What?
I didn't say anything.
Couldn't hear you. I'm cranking one of my mashups.
Ah.
Hey, there they are. How's the first day back in prison?
Fine. Yep. What are you guys doing?
Your mom and I are racing to the mailbox in Sequoia and back.
Why?
I don't know.
Oh, she knows. Hey, buddy, as soon as I'm done kicking a little mom butt here, how about I school you in some Mario Kart?
Can't. Gotta work on my journal.
Lame. Hey, Alex, you?
I have a history paper.
Well, if you want to see a little history being made right here.
Not really.
Okay. Ready?
Are you?
I was born ready. I came out of the womb wearing tiny little
Go.
golden wings.
I run 5 miles a day. I have a resting heart rate of 48. There is no way I'm going to lose a 2-mile race to Johnny Ski Pole.
Saving my energy. Drafting off of you. You feeling cocky?
Yeah, I am.
Love it.
But after seeing that t-shirt, I realized something. The first day of school is tough on all my kids. especially the one I married.
Boop, boop, boop. Afterburner's engaged. Woo! Don't choke on my smoke. And down the stretch he goes. I don't believe it. Daddy wins. Do you believe in miracles? USA, US. Oh no!
Oh, what was that? Was that a person?
good.
Dad?
I'm good.
Honey, you
I'm good.
okay?
Woo! You're getting better, sweetheart.
Did I lose the race to make him feel better? Maybe. But it just seemed like he could use a win today.
All right. Well, Phil needed to win that race. So the whole idea is that men and women, all of us, run on red and green M&Ms. And it's not just in my little theory, it's not just in Modern Family, it's also found in Scripture, I think. So, Lorene, why don't you start reading part of Ephesians chapter 5, and then I think Brian's going to finish it up.
Yeah, so this is Apostle Paul writing in the first century, and we'll start with verse 22. It says, "Wives, submit to your own husbands as to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, his body, and is himself its Savior. Now as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit in everything to their husbands."
Then he speaks directly to husbands and says, "Husbands, love your wives, as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of the water with the word, so that he might present the church to himself in splendor, without spot or wrinkle or any such thing, that she might be holy and without blemish. In the same way, husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. For no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as Christ does the church, because we are members of his body."
And then starting at verse 31, "Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. This mystery is profound, and I am saying that it refers to Christ and the church. However, let each one of you love his wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband."
One of the things I point out in every wedding that I do is in that passage, it doesn't say, "Husbands, love your wives, wives, love your husbands." It says something different. It's not the way I would have written it. I would have said, "Husbands, love your wives, wives, love your husbands," but Scripture is telling us something else. Now, Lorene, you read the part that people really struggle with, which is about wives submitting to your husbands. What does that mean? Talk about that for a minute.
Well, I'm going to jump back to a story about that. When we got engaged, we had some premarital counseling with the pastor that was our pastor of our church at the time, Pastor Gary. And in our initial premarital counseling session, I don't remember a lot of what happened in that session other than the first thing he asked. He was sitting behind his desk. We were sitting on the other side. And he looked right at me and he said, "So, Lorene, what's it mean to submit?" Now, I was a 22-year-old young engaged woman. I had grown up in a home with my dad as a pastor, Christian home. I somehow totally missed any biblical teaching on submission. I had no idea how to respond. And I remember just looking at him like a deer caught in the headlights and thinking, well, it means to give in to whatever Brian wants, whatever he wants. And he's thinking, hey, I like the way she's thinking. But Pastor Gary was so gracious in his response to me and helping me understand and us understand that submission isn't what I think many of us tend to feel and respond to, that knee-jerk reaction that we don't like, because we misunderstand it as submission as being inferior or being dominated by somebody else. And that's really our cultural way of viewing submission. Whereas, again, Pastor Gary explained then, and something I've learned a lot since, is it really means to submit, means to respect, to see the other as equally valuable before God. So for me, it was meant to learn to trust my husband, to respect him, to honor him, and to trust his leadership. It means to understand that your husband has a deep need for green M&Ms, respect, and it means to give him that respect as a gift of love. And so it was something that was really a beautiful, beautiful thing to understand once I fully understand what it meant, and not my incorrect understanding of the word submission.
Brian, what about love?
Yeah, when I do weddings, I often will have a line in there after I read a portion of this same text. I'll say, now, in our world today, to say, wives, submit to your husband sounds almost crazy and incredibly sexist in our way of hearing it, if it were not for what comes next. Because what comes next is really important. But back to the respect thing, I've come to think of respect as kind of the currency of manhood. Like Joe said, that's what I wake up every day, consciously or unconsciously, looking for green M&Ms. I'm looking for respect. It's like the air that I breathe as a man, and I get respect from what I do. We as men get respect for what we do, what we accomplish. I can get it from work, I can get it from my kids, I can get it from other men, but most of all, I need it from her.
By the way, that's why men, when we meet with a bunch of men, you talk about sports, and then you only have one question to ask, is what's your name? The next question is what? What do you do? What do you do? Right? And people, that's when M&Ms are going to trade hands, because somebody says, what do you do? And I'll ask them, hey, what do you do? They'll say, well, I'm executive vice president of such and such a company. What do you do? And I say, I'm a minister. And they'll go, good for you. Like I'm a Boy Scout. Good for you, Bucky. Give me a little noogie and walk away with all my M&Ms. So go ahead. Sorry.
Exactly. So, and I need the green M&Ms mostly from her. And one of the ways through the years she's done this, and I didn't realize it probably in these terms early on, but I can remember almost the first time that she did this. We always had family prayer at dinner time, just a little prayer before dinner, and we'd all take turns doing that. And I remember one time when it was her turn, just tucked in her everyday, dinner prayer, she said, and thank you for Daddy and how hard he works to take care of all of us. That simple line, I almost burst into tears at the dinner table, because I could feel my heart swell up. And I don't think she had any idea what that meant to me, that she just put it in a little prayer. And in front of our boys, that was significant. That was green M. She was just shoveling green M&Ms my way. But it's interesting that the Bible doesn't tell me to respect her. I think it assumes that, but it gives me a little bit different charge. It says, love your wife as Christ loved the church. That's why submission doesn't sound crazy, because of what comes next to me. I was in a Middle Eastern country a few years ago on a mission trip, and I saw this play out in front of me. I was looking across the street, and a man was walking with his wife, but she was walking like 3 steps behind him as they walked down the street. And I realized that was culture. I realized I knew enough about culture. That was a cultural thing. And then it started to rain as I watched them. And the woman walking 3 steps behind her husband took an umbrella that she was carrying, opened it, took it up to her husband. He held it, and she went back and walked in the rain while he held it over himself. That didn't look culture. I knew that was also culture, but that didn't look like love to me. That looked like something else. That looked like master and slave. That's not what the Bible's talking about. I had a guy call me one time on the phone at church, and he was wanting me to side with them. He said, in a terrible marital conflict, and he said, she won't obey me. She won't submit to me. The Bible says she should submit to me. And I could sense in his voice something was wrong. And so he went through this whole litany of complaints against his wife, why she wouldn't submit, she wouldn't obey, she wouldn't do what he said. And so she was in the wrong. She was sinning against him. And I said, okay, I got that part, but do you know what that verse says next? He was quiet. I said, do you know what it says next? Do you know what it tells you to do? And I read it for him. It says to love your wife and give yourself up for her as Christ did the church. So that's talking about sacrifice, giving your life for her. How are you doing at that? Dead quiet. And when he spoke again, he was really mad. He eventually hung up on me because he didn't want to hear that part of it. When we understand that our love is to be sacrificial, then submission is not domination. Submission is a gift that she gives me, and respect she gives me, and I give her love and cherishing her in return.
Okay.
So when you get married, both of you have a full jar. My jar's full of green ones to give to him. His jar is full of red ones to give to me. We ironically had Joe's dad do our marriage counseling, which would be awkward at times, believe me. But one thing he did say that I remember, it was simple but very profound. He said, well, Karen, what makes you think you're not going to get divorced? 50% of couples get divorced. And I said, well, I just won't. I won't. And he said, well, no one gets married with their full jar thinking that they're going to be the one to get divorced. But it's just little things that happen, unintentional maybe, intentional, bad choices, bad habits. Little things start to empty those jars, and nobody is there to fill it.
So what I tell people all the time is that marriages are either spiraling up or spiraling down. They hardly ever stay in a holding pattern for very long. Your marriage, spiraling up, spiraling down. It's one or the other. It may be spiraling down just for a few hours or a few days, or it might be in a pattern of spiraling down. Spiraling down means that you and your spouse are losing more red and green M&Ms than you're putting in the jar. Spiraling up means your net gain every day. You have a net gain every day. All right, so one of the things now is the question is how do marriages start to spiral down? How do M&Ms start to fall out of the jar, or we empty the jar? Now I want you to know too, M&Ms evaporate also. You don't have to take them out. Eventually they evaporate. You have to replace M&Ms. You have to give more all the time to your spouse. But you can be subtracting M&Ms and you don't even realize it. We saw this commercial and we thought we'd play this for you as the intro to how we take M&Ms from our spouse. So play this in.
My eyes are
All
closed.
right, here we go. Here it is. Okay.
This is my anniversary gift?
Yep.
A vacuum cleaner?
Dual bag. This is the best vacuum cleaner you'll ever have, baby.
Get in there.
What? Not a big fan of that look. I got you.
New arrival in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What is this place?
You are in the doghouse.
Dog?
Since time immemorial, when men have messed up, they get sent here by their wives or girlfriends. Bold.
Yeah, but I don't deserve to be here. I didn't do anything.
Every man in the doghouse thinks he's innocent. Isn't that right, boys?
Look, all I know is that I got my wife this really nice gift, and then now here.
What'd you get her?
This brand new dual bag vacuum cleaner, actually.
Hear that, boys? You got our vacuum cleaner.
You're a fool, man. Oh, it was dual bag.
And Dualback doesn't know why he's here.
I realize it's not the most romantic gift, but
There are many reasons a man can end up in here.
Hey, Dualbag. All I did was tell my wife that her mom looked hot in a bathing suit. It was a compliment. I was just trying to be nice.
That's bull.
She was smoking.
Apologize without caveat.
She was smoking.
I told my wife that staying home with the kids was a heck of a lot easier than having to actually work for a living.
Pops. See, a lot of guys end up in here during the holidays because they give their wives thoughtless gifts, like a vacuum cleaner.
I got my wife extra RAM memory for her computer as a gift. I even attached a note that said, "Thank you for the memories." Didn't go down very well.
Help with the cooking.
That's Oscar. He's been here so long he's plain lost his mind. Legend has it he gave his wife a mustache waxer during the holidays.
What is that on your lip?
how do you get out?
Listen,
It's real hard.
apologize without
I just got reviewed last week. I went up before this review board.
Let's review your offense.
Merry Christmas.
Seriously?
What? Thought you'd want to tighten up that jelly belly, no?
Wow! I'm married to you.
A little more of this, and a little less of that.
Wow. I think we've seen enough. So, Donnie, you think you're ready to rejoin your lovely wife?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Donald, I'll be candid. If I had my way, you wouldn't even go before this board.
I don't know what I was thinking when I gave my wife an abscessizer as a gift.
Stupid, stupid, stupid.
So next time you get her something truly nice, like a gym membership, perhaps.
Exactly. I mean, no, I wouldn't get it that. I wouldn't get it that. I wouldn't get it that. Please.
It's too big. I just want to get out of here.
You like that?
Apologize.
Yeah.
Did I fool you?
Yeah.
I didn't fool them. Set up. Trick question. I'm out the door.
Work on the folding, Donnie. Bye-bye.
Is there any hope? Can you get out of here?
One man got out.
Express
Arnold.
Help with the cooking. Stop checking out other women in restaurants.
He sent us this.
Offer to change.
Arnold's wife let him out of the doghouse. Not sure how he did it.
Hey, lunch!
But don't
Oh, what is this? Cheese pie? Quiche. Chai lattes every night.
express your feelings.
Well, we call that's elimination of M&Ms by subtraction through selfishness. So that's giving one, taking two, right? You give one, you take two. And just in the spirit of full disclosure, on the occasion of our 11th wedding anniversary, which was the anniversary where she gave me a hand calligraphied copy of our wedding vows, fully framed. Beautiful, touching. I gave her a 3-quart iced tea maker.
I actually really liked it, though.
3-quart. It was a 3-quart. Well, selfish M&M giving is the husband who makes a deposit but simultaneously makes a greater withdrawal, like bringing home flowers after work and then announcing he's going out bowling with the guys instead of out to the dinner date they had planned. That's a deposit and a greater withdrawal. Or it's the wife who gives a compliment that's really a backhanded criticism, like, it's nice to have you home for a change. Deposit, withdrawal. You take more M&Ms out than you put in.
Then there's just ignorance, which I plead, because we got married in August, and in February, the first Valentine's Day as a married couple. Now, I grew up with Brian and my little brother, and so we had all boys in our family, so we didn't pay attention to holidays like Valentine's Day. So I was in college, and I was playing basketball for the team, and Brian was helping to coach the team that I was on, and after practice on February 14th, I said, hey, you have any place to eat dinner tonight? Because he was actually,
You don't need to tell that part, but
poorer than we were. And he said, no. I said, why don't you come over? So he came home with me unannounced on February 14th. Tell him what you had.
So I had beef stroganoff, which was at that time his favorite, and I had the china out and candles, and I was looking forward to a romantic evening.
So I walked in.
man, it smelled good when I got there, too. Your wife is
I just had
awesome.
two plates. Two plates.
The amazing thing is I walked into that and I was going, wow, beef stroganoff, to China. Brian, you picked a good day to come over. I was like, and he didn't know either. He didn't go, hey, Joe, it looks like it was special. He was going, yeah. So we sat down, had the meal. I didn't think, I knew after Brian left, I knew things were getting colder, and I didn't know why. But that's part of just being insensitive. And there's sometimes that ladies, guys don't mean to do anything. I didn't mean to do anything. I know I subtracted a ton, but it was just because I was stupid.
Yeah, and to be fair, if I had been able to communicate, I was looking forward to a romantic evening, you would have definitely sent Brian packing. But I didn't.
Now, to tell how that story ended, just so you know. So she didn't, at that time, we didn't fight well. And so she would not say anything. And I had no sensitivity toward anything. So I was just like bumbling through life. And she was getting madder and madder because I was such a moron. And then...
That's not true, but he and Brian spent a lot of time together, so...
But all of a sudden, like 3 days later, we're in this just a little bit of an argument, and she goes, "Why didn't you just marry your brother?" And I was going, "What? He doesn't even shave his legs. That makes no sense," you know? But that's the way we fought back then. All right, next one.
There's a third way that we subtract M&Ms from each other, and this can also be unintentional, is what we call starvation, just slowly over time. And it happens in marriage. It's kind of a form of, I was thinking about this, it's a byproduct of familiarity over the years. It's a kind of a byproduct of laziness and routines. You know, we all develop routines, and I could give you a detailed account of our early morning routine that we go through every single day. I'm good at routines, but when routines become ruts, what happens is you can slowly starve each other for M&Ms.
Yeah, and it doesn't happen all at once. It really happens just a little bit over time when we each start taking each other for granted. And what used to be a time when he might come in the house and thank me profusely for the meal I made, maybe no words are said after a meal is made. Or when the wife, who used to be very excited to see him come home and affectionate, no longer wants to sit by him or touch him. So it's very much a slow process that happens over time that you hardly ever even notice that it's happening.
And if that comes out of routine and just basic lack of caring for the relationship, this next one, if you're watching the slides, is the worst. Aggressive taking is when someone has just decided, I want what I want when I want it, and I don't care what you say, and I don't care what you want. John Gottman, who is a marriage researcher, calls this type of behavior an attitude of contempt. And basically, that is denial of that other person and their needs. And this is really one of the most damaging types of behavior. It would be similar to somebody saying to their husband, say a woman saying to her husband, "We would have a great trip if you had a better job, or if you worked harder," or, you know, it's just that pointing a finger. He might say, "I wish you would get a job," or "I wish you would do something, then we wouldn't have this mess." So it's pointing the finger, it's direct, it's not loving, and it's very destructive.
So the first couple, we're just taking a couple at a time. That is massive, and aggressive taking can take the form of a fight, like a big blowout fight. And because I wanted this to be something where we covered the whole gamut, I'm going to show you a clip from This Is Us, from that show. And it's a brutal fight. Some of you have never had a fight like this, and some of you have had a fight like this within the last 72 hours. But I want you to see this, and then we're going to go have our little intermission, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about how to recover from this. But show this clip from This Is Us.
Great conversation, Rebecca. Way to hash
The first
this out.
time in years that I had something for myself. The first time in years that I want...
Say it.
No.
No, go ahead and say it. First time in years what? That you were fulfilled? Go ahead and say it out loud. That we don't fulfill you. Go ahead and say it out loud, that your life is...
I have no life. I have zero life, Jack. I am a housewife to 3 teenagers who do not need me anymore. And I have a husband who waltzes in every night at 8 o'clock, if I'm lucky, goes to the kitchen, recaps his day for me, and then passes out upstairs at 10 o'clock. I have no life. I am a friggin' ghost.
Wow, well, you know what? That is something.
No. Admit to me that you hated the fact that I had something happening for myself.
I hated that you lied about working with your ex-boyfriend.
No, that's total BS, Jack. You hated the fact that I was singing again.
I was fine with it.
You didn't want me to have a career. You never
career?
did.
You are a 40-year-old woman singing covers in pubs. That is not a career, Rebecca. That is ridiculous. And the fact that I am supporting this family financially and emotionally, and still I am being attacked for not being supportive, that makes me want to ram my head through a damn wall.
Wow. Let your father out, Jack. Let him out. Doesn't that feel good? Doesn't it feel good to let go of the whole Mr.
given you
Perfect
everything
charade?
that you wanted. I have sacrificed
You
for this family,
sacrificed.
yet you don't
You
know the
sacrificed.
half of the load that I have
Was it
had to
hard
carry.
for you to make every
You don't know
single
the things.
decision for this
You don't
family
know
and
what
watch
I've
me
given
follow?
up. You don't know
No,
the things that I've
You
had
want
to
a family.
do. The
You want a
crap that
house.
I've had
you want
to
a kid,
eat.
and I follow.
I devoted
But
my
you
life to you
sacrificed-
so that
Jack,
you
that
could
is
have a
absolutely
life in front of my face.
It is
How dare
absolutely
you?
ridiculous.
You know, this is insane. This is insane. We love each other.
What do you love about me?
Huh?
What do you love about me? Tell me. The me as I am right now, not the me that you've conjured up in your mind over the years. What do you love about me right now, Jack? So the next time you tell me that you love me, make sure you're not doing it just out of habit. I'm tired. And I'm really sad, and I'm gonna go to bed.
Yeah, wait, let me just say one thing. That's a scene where a jar has been completely emptied out, and then it's like a lid's been put on. And if you've ever felt that before, then you have no idea what to do. Then after this intermission, you come back, we promise. We'll show you what to do to open the jar and then to begin to fill it again. All right?
Great. So we have, interestingly enough, M&M cookies out in the atrium, as well as water and some drinks. If we're just gonna take probably no more than 10 minutes, you can grab a refreshment, hit the bathroom, and then come on back. All right, thanks.
Dave, did you say you were going to make dinner? I couldn't remember.
What? I just wish you'd take some initiative and cook your own dinner for once. I've been at work too, you know, and now I get to come home and pack the dishwasher and then unpack the dishwasher and cook dinner and put the washing on, and you know what? I can't continue to live like this because it's not me.
Hey, relax. It's going to be all right.
How?
Here, I'll just show you. Okay, I've been doing this since we moved in. See this basket thing? I don't know how it happens, if it's the house or what, but any dirty clothes you put in this basket, somehow the next day they're just clean, folded, and in a perfect pile on your bed.
You're not serious.
I couldn't believe it at first either, but it just keeps happening. That's why I didn't tell you. I didn't want to jinx it.
You are insane.
Try it, you'll see. Unless it's only chosen me. See, I don't know.
I can't do this.
No, wait. There's other things too. Plates, cutlery, pizza boxes, dirty tissues, anything you leave on this coffee table just vanishes overnight. I mean, sometimes I'll see how far I can push this thing and I'll just leave everywhere. And then sure enough, the next day, it's all gone. It's just vanished. It's magic. No, she wouldn't have left me. This is what I think happened. I heard her get up in the middle of the night to get a drink or something. She must have fallen onto the magic coffee table and just vanished.
Are you insane?
No, he's not insane. I've got the same coffee table at home.
Okay. We thought we'd bring you back with that commercial just because we left you in a rough spot. We started the whole first section, and this section will not be as long, but the whole first section was that it's easy to start pulling M&Ms from your spouse. In fact, I remember when I first started to really think about this theory and how I was going to treat Karen, as I was out in my backyard with my son Jeremy, and we were digging a hole, and we were having some people over that night, and Karen had asked me earlier, she said, hey, we're having these people over tonight, should I go out and get a pie for dessert? And I said, in my mind, trying to help her, no, don't worry about it. And I'm thinking, they're coming over to the house, dinner should be enough. But that's just the way guys think. said, we'll give him, I don't know, there's some ice cream or anything. So that's the conversation we had earlier. She came walking out while we were digging this hole with 2 glasses of iced tea. And she gave them to us because it was a hot day. And then she said, I went ahead and went out and got a pie. And I said, I thought we decided we weren't going to get a pie. We didn't decide. I said we shouldn't get a pie. And she said, well, I thought I would go out and get one. And I said, whatever. And I saw it in her eyes, right? And she turned around and she started walking back to the house. And we were in the back of our backyard. And I was watching her walk back to the house with this glass of iced tea in my hand. And I gave it to my son. And I said, Jeremy, you just saw your dad make a mistake. I got to go because your mom is walking back to the house feeling worse about herself now than when she walked out here. And that's my fault. And what I had done was taken M&Ms from her, and I took more than I gave because I didn't give any. But so that's the whole process. And then we showed you just the aggressive taking one. And there are times when you have a fight like that, and you have an empty jar then because you've messed up so badly, and then you try to make it better by doing a few things, and they do this. And you go, man, nothing's working. Nothing's working. Okay, so this is how you take the lid off. Now, Karen, you've probably figured it out since we've been talking that Karen's the wise one. And she explained, she saw this and then explained to me something about different levels of apology and how they work. And I wanted her to explain that to all of us now.
Yeah, so they're going to show a screen up there, and we're going to go through this real quick because it's pretty common knowledge, but I just want to invite you to consider maybe some new ways to talk to one another in terms of apology. And apology is a really important part of your relationship. It's basically a putting down the power. If you look at the aggressive taking as taking power, the apology puts down the power and opens the door for communication. So the very first one is just simple, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I'm late. No excuses. I'm sorry. We started talking about this and we used this example. I'm sorry I broke your coffee mug. Okay? It was a minor offense. I'm sorry, it's over. Now the next one, it starts to get a little more difficult as we go. Sorry, I can't see that far. Accepting responsibility, taking responsibility for your actions. So if we use the mug example, I'm sorry I broke your mug by carelessly throwing my backpack on the kitchen table. So there's the apology with taking responsibility. Not...
That sounds like something's actually happened.
It does, doesn't it? It did. Not, I'm sorry I broke your mug, but you shouldn't have had it on the kitchen table. An apology does not end with, but you, ... An apology is me taking responsibility. The next one is making restitution. I'm going to change the example a little bit just to say, what if he forgot my birthday? I'm sorry I forgot your birthday, but let me make it up to you. And then women or men, whoever's the recipient of the apology, please just tell them what they could do. Make a list. You can take me out to dinner. You can give me a gift card. You can do, when someone's offering to open that door, don't be stubborn and keep it closed or close it a little bit.
And this is what hit me, that when you've been in a relationship for as long as we have, you've learned to make different types of apologies. I just didn't realize they were like this. Because I talk to a lot of guys who will say, I said I was sorry. Well, sometimes sorry isn't good enough. And you forget your wife's birthday, you better say you're sorry and then say, how can I make it up to you? Because that's not only expressing regret, it's showing that you care enough to say, listen, I'm sorry, I really want to make this right?
So again, we're getting a little more difficult. This next one is genuinely expressing the desire to change your behavior. And normally that would happen with something that was more hurtful and required change in behavior.
Right, so when we were talking about it, we were trying to say, okay, let's come up with an illustration for when a guy does something where he needs to express an apology, ask for, and then say, this is why this will never happen again. And the thing that I thought of right away was pornography. And if a man, when a man watches pornography or sees pornography, it hurts his wife. And so when a wife will find that out, and we've dealt with this in counseling, I mean, all four of us at different times with different people. But when a wife finds it out, she not only wants an apology, she wants to know, okay, what are you going to do about that? How is that going to not happen again? And for an apology to work, in that case, you have to say, I'm really sorry. It's not, how can I make it up to you? It's, this is why, this is what the steps I'm going to take so this will not happen anymore, whether it's to install Covenant Eyes on your computer or whatever.
And if she, perhaps, has a spending problem, it would mean her saying, I'm sorry, let's come up with a plan so that this won't hurt our relationship. So expressing the apology also leads to an action. And then the last little thing I wanted to talk about was forgiveness and requesting forgiveness. And that goes a little bit deeper, and of course, all situations are different, but saying I'm sorry, will you forgive me, is the healing balm that opens the jar. Will you forgive me is putting that power down and allowing the other person to say, yes, I will forgive you. And in their saying yes, they're also saying, I will not hold this against you. Now, it doesn't mean that you might not have to say, I'm sorry again, but it does mean that it is no longer to be used against you. Some other things is, I'm sorry, will you forgive me? What do I need to do to regain your trust? Give me some real specific things that I can do that show you that I want to change. Then the last one is, it's a request. It's not a demand. So, I'm sorry, will you forgive me? You better forgive me because I've put myself out there. That kind of voids the whole issue. It's open and it's letting the other person forgive you.
And that can take some time, too. You don't demand that a time limit on that. You say, I know I've hurt you deeply. I'm asking that you forgive me. Take your time, but please. And then you have to do it again. So, all right, so that opens the jar. Now the question is, how do we begin to fill the jar? Gary Chapman wrote a book a while ago that's become very popular. It's called The 5 Love Languages. It's a very, very good book. Probably a lot of you have read it. If you've never read it, I would suggest that you pick it up. It's at the back of your little program that you have where there are resources there. What Gary Chapman did was he said that there are basically ways that you communicate love, that there are 5 basic ways. He called them languages because he said that everybody has 1 or 2 primary ways that they feel love. And so if you can figure out your spouse's love languages, you can, when you do something, it adds more M&Ms than one of the other love languages. So I'm going to go through the love languages, and then and we will kind of bounce back and forth. And I'm going to ask Brian and Lorene what their love languages are and how they use them to fill each other up. And then Karen and I are going to talk about it, and then I'm going to give you a challenge. All right, so these are the 5 love languages. Words of affirmation, which are compliments. It can be written, it can be verbal, it can be anything like that. Acts of service, ways that you serve. Another person, I know that my mom has never put gas in her car, ever. She didn't, when my dad had a stroke, she didn't know where the gas thing went, right? So that's acts of service. 3 is quality time, which is just spending time with each other. 4 are gifts, and which are pretty self-explanatory. And then 5 is physical touch. Okay, those are the 5. Now, Brian, Lorene, what are your primary primary gifts or, gosh, primary whatever I'm trying to say?
Love language.
And then say how you do it.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about each other. I do agree that book, this theory is very simple. Everyone can understand it. And by the way, this book is one of the few books I've ever seen men read all the way through because it's funny and you can find yourself in it, you can find your spouse in it. So follow Joe's instructions. Get it if you haven't read it. It's very helpful. We still talk about these things 30 years after we read the book. But my wife is, when it comes to love languages, she is multilingual. Which is actually good because I have a better chance of speaking the right language, but probably her strongest language is acts of service. And that simply means that she will experience something I do to serve her way more than I would experience if she serves me, because that's not my primary love language. For example, I grew up in a family with our mom. I grew up in a family kind of like that little video, meaning all we had to do as boys after dinner was take our dishes to the vicinity of the sink and put them on the counter. And they magically reappeared the next day on the dinner table totally clean. That's all we had to do, just take them here to there. That was what we did. And so I got married all these years later, and that's what I did. But that didn't get it done. And so I've learned through the years to pay attention to the kitchen. And this is a slow process for me. We've been married 32 years. But I slowly learned her love language, and I started to pay attention to the kitchen. There's lots of stuff in the kitchen that can be done. And I would early in our marriage, I didn't even pay attention to it at all. You remember the bedroom kitchen story? I didn't even go in there, right? Because I did my job. I took it over to the sink. Well, so I pay attention now to the dishwasher. It's one of the things I can do. Because I've learned over time that if the dishwasher's run, I even now know how to run it and start it. But when it's done, one of the things she really loves if I notice that little light on, if I'll unload the dishwasher and put all the dishes back, right? Now that only takes me like 5 minutes. It's not my first inclination. My first inclination is to ignore that little light. Because I don't really care about the dishes. I'll use them right out of the dishwasher and put them back in. That doesn't matter, it doesn't bother me. But I notice the dishwasher, and here's why I do it. I'm getting better and better even now at noticing it, doing it, because every time I do it, every single time, she notices. And I realize it just made a deposit of those red M&Ms.
Well, and his love language, on the other hand, is quality time. And so one of the things I had to learn was what that looked like for him. And oftentimes he would come in the house and I would ask, well, how was your day? Wanting to find out. And it really depended on what I was doing. Oftentimes I was multitasking when he came in, and I thought that I could listen, put the dishes away, and pay attention to one of the boys at the same time. And if that was the case, he would just typically say it was fine and not much more.
Or pretty good.
But what I found was when we would have time, actually for us, it was away from the house. I wasn't distracted and tempted to do other things. But when we were at a restaurant and I could look at him face to face, one-on-one, he was willing to open up and share things that I wouldn't have heard otherwise, and we talk about goals and dreams, things that I came to know he needed my full attention. So quality time is one-on-one, is undivided attention, face-to-face conversation. So those of us that like to multitask, really it's not loving our partner in the best way than if they're a person that speaks quality time, because it really demands one-on-one, focused attention that speaks love to them.
All right, I'm going to tell you a story about words of affirmation because it just happened last weekend. Last weekend, I got to spend, we went down to visit our daughter Becca down in Houston. And we were just in the car with just her, and she was asking questions about kind of when we first got married, because she's getting close to, she thinks she's found the guy that she wants to marry, and so she's asking all these questions. And she had heard me tell a story to her that after we've been married for just 3 years?
Yeah.
3 years, I ended up without being able to talk to Karen, I felt compelled to give all of our money away. And so it's kind of a long story, but I gave every dime that we had, and it was the most we'd ever had. And Karen is responsible she was responsible really for saving that money. And so I gave it all away.
I feel like you should tell them what was on the table. The guy told you, if you will do that, I will believe that there's a God.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a long, long story, but it's not like he had somebody walk up to him and said, give me your money, and you handed it over.
Yeah. I thought it was important for this guy to come to Christ. And that's the way he framed it. And so I gave him the money. And so Becca was saying, so Mom, how did you deal with that? Like, how did you, like, why didn't you just go off? And she was really trying to figure it out. And then Karen said almost matter-of-factly, she said, Becca, you got to realize I'm crazy about your dad. And it was stunning to me. I was driving, and I looked at Karen, and she was just saying, she didn't say, I used to be crazy about your dad. She said, I'm crazy about your dad, which means that I will always give the benefit of the doubt. I will always trust him. I will always figure this out. I will always end up on his side. So words of affirmation, and there are little things that you can do. I mean, there are little times and times when I tell Karen how good she looks because she looks so good, and that is a couple of M&Ms. But when you have a chance to do that in front of your daughter or in front of another person, it's phenomenal. So I told Karen I was going to have to tell that story just because it was so wonderful. All right, go ahead. Yours is acts of service.
Glad. No, mine is gifts.
Oh, yours is gifts.
A quick. It's a tie. They're a tie. Exactly even, but they already talked about it, so I'm going to go with gifts, right?
You bet. You go. You're doing great.
So Joe won me over. Y'all have heard the ice cream story when he went across campus with a bowl of ice cream, but he also bought me these little Tootsie Pops that were caramel. They don't even make them anymore, but he would bring me those all the time. And that is what the gift love language means. Finding out what that person likes and just finding little things. And he's been really good at that. And this is going to sound really cheesy, but I have to say it. So this is us. And the thing that means the most to me, and it's sort of a gift as well as, I don't know, you put it in your own category, but it's a gift to me that Joe makes a priority to spend time with Jesus in the morning. And I know no matter how early his morning is, he's going to get up a little bit earlier, and he's going to sit in the same chair, and he's going to turn on the same light, and he's going to prepare himself for the day, which is also preparing himself for me. And the finality of that gift is he always brings me that cup of coffee and sets it right on my nightstand. So whether I'm up or when I wake up, I always know that there is a little gift from him, and it's a cup of coffee. So I appreciate that.
Okay, and the last love language is physical touch. And physical touch, most guys feel like we're physical touch people because we like sex. And that doesn't make you a physical touch person, it makes you a man. So, physical touch is you're more likely to understand that you have the gift, that you have the love language of physical touch if you're laying on the ground, you're watching TV, and one of your kids steps over you, you can't help but grab them and wrestle them. Or when you're watching TV with your spouse, that you just like to be touching a little bit. And so I actually, that is one of my love languages, physical touch. So when we watch TV, most of the time, I will lay like this, and Karen will be sitting there, and I will put my feet up on her lap. I think she really likes it. I don't know. But it seems to work for us. So, all that to say that those are ways that I think Gary Chapman did a great job of figuring out kind of 5 different ways that you can express love. Every time you express love to your spouse, whether it's words of affirmation or acts of service or gifts or quality time or physical touch, you're making deposits of M&Ms. Every time you discount somebody, every time you hurt their feelings, every time you say something, you see their eyes go down, like I saw Karen's eyes go down, you have made a withdrawal. And so, like I said at the beginning, marriages are either spiraling up or spiraling down. Marriages that are spiraling up are wonderful. It seems like it's easy because you're receiving M&Ms. When you're receiving them, it's easy to give them. When you're giving them, it's easier to receive them, and like that. The same thing happens on a spiraling down. When you start to feel like your spouse has taken M&Ms from you, then I always tell people too, when you start going down that road, when it's spiraling down, it's like every time you have an opportunity to stop the spiral, it gets harder if you don't stop it then. If I feel like Karen has hurt my feelings or something, and then I'm in a bad mood, so then I take some from her, then she has a choice whether she's going to take some more from me or if she's going to try to stop the spiral. If she takes more from me, it gets harder, but then it's my decision whether I'm going to stop the spiral and I'm going to start making deposits, or I'm going to say, listen, I'm sorry for what I did. Will you please forgive me? And I start the process of rebuilding. There are some of you who are in a downward spiral. Some of you are doing great, all right? If you're doing great, keep doing great. Maybe you can take some of this stuff and you can put it into action, and it will make your marriage better. Some of you are in a downward spiral and you need to stop. It needs to start tonight. It needs to start with apology, with the whole process of apology, saying, I'm sorry. I want you to know I take full responsibility. I want you to know it will never happen again. I want you to know I will do whatever you want me to do to make it up to you. And then you have to start doing every day. This is my challenge to you. Every day for the next 30 days, before you go to bed, you ask your spouse, this is what I mean by giving you a language to talk about it. Ask your spouse before you go to bed, listen, did I give more than I took today? Just today. Did I net out +1? By the way, that's why I bring Karen coffee in the morning. Every morning I have this, the carafe of coffee in her cup, and I put it down so quiet so she won't wake up. I'm like, it's like a contest to me to see how quiet I can put it. I walk away. I'm like up 3. Day hasn't even started yet. So I have to do something at least -3 to get to even, which is great. So that's what I mean. At the end of the day, you end up saying, am I net +1? That's all I want to know. And if your spouse says no, then you have to talk about it. You have to say, tell me where I took more. Tell me what I can do. Because tomorrow I'm going to be plus. I'm going to be net. I'm going to be up something. If you are a net positive every day for 30 days, your marriage will be revolutionized. I'll say it again. If you are a plus net something every day for 30 days, your marriage will be unbelievably better than it is right now. If you are a minus net something for 30 days straight, your marriage will be terribly worse than it is right now. That's the way it works. Great marriages, I think, happen little by little, one M&M at a time, one habit at a time, one statement at a time, one gift at a time. So I just want to challenge you to do that. And if you do, I'm telling you, and as a church, we long for our marriages to get stronger. We pray for you guys all the time for your marriages. And we put on things like this just to try to encourage you in your marriage. So thanks for coming tonight. Thank you, Brian and Lorene, for coming with us and doing this with us. And I think, Todd, are you going to close or am I? Did I tell you I was going to close? No. Okay, good. You're up. Thanks.
Hey, would you just give them a round of applause? Thanks so much, too.